Welcome everybody. Welcome to AZ Security. My name is Dylan Paardenkoper. I'm working at IT Impressive, and today we have a new topic, and that is the Azure Governance tooling, which will be presented by Seif Bassem from Microsoft. Seif, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Seif Bassem, and I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I work at a team called Tech Strategy, where I get to work with customers all over the world to help use Azure in the right way. And we also build solutions and maintain solutions like Azure Landing Zones and other tools that are available in the Cloud Adoption Framework, and lots of the community uses day in and day out. So thanks for inviting me to the channel.
Yeah, of course. I saw your message on the ALZ community, which you presented this beautiful tool we're going to talk about. And I was completely in love with it, and I felt like I have to ask you to demonstrate it to the community here. So that's why I just pinged you, and thanks for being part of it.
Definitely. So let me just give first a quick overview about the tool so that the audience know what we're talking about. So the tool, as you mentioned, is called the Azure Governance Visualizer, short AzGovViz. And as the subheading says, clicking endlessly in the portal is not fun. From this subheading, you see that this tool is going to help you look through Azure estate in terms of governance and a little bit in terms of security, and help you automate having a 360 vision of your Azure environment instead of just clicking everywhere to get the information that you need. And we're going to see how this works in the demo. So first, I'm going to put here a couple of questions. I'm sure at one stage you've asked that question or someone has asked you that question. And the tool that we're going to go through today hopefully is going to help you have a good answer to those kind of questions. So someone would ask you, why does a specific team have right access to our production workloads? Sometimes when someone is troubleshooting or someone is taking a look, you might give them more access than they actually need, and then this access is forgotten, and you have like a backdoor always available to your production systems. So those kind of forgotten permissions are usually hard to trace. You'd have to run PowerShell scripts or maintain like change management log to understand what happened and go and fix that. Sometimes also, not sometimes, but always, auditing your environment is very painful. And auditing an environment as big as Azure, if you have thousands of resources in Azure, thousands of subscriptions, it's very hard to look at, have a 360 view of your governance. You have policies, you have roles, you have custom roles, you have service principles, you have limits in Azure. It's very hard to audit this on a regular basis. That's why lots of companies maybe outsourced auditing to other companies that would do this for them.
I think this is, I guess, maybe the most use case to fix basically.
Yeah,
from security
exactly.
perspective.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And also in terms of auditing, you would usually ask your security team or your governance team what kind of policies, of course, if you're using Azure policies, which everyone should, which policies are just auditing, which policies are enforcing controls and configuration. And is this what we really want? Do you want everything to just audit, or do we want to enforce certain configuration? Again, it's this unclear compliance or measuring this compliance rate is also a little bit challenging, and just leveraging the portal is sometimes not the best idea. Another common thing is when you're working in a big Azure environment, if you don't have like a strict or specific hierarchy that you've defined centrally and everyone follows, then you're going to get like a a family tree of management groups and subscription in Azure. It's very hard to look at. It's very hard to understand what's what, how to centrally apply RBAC roles, how to centrally apply policies, even looking at cost. If you want to look for a specific department or a specific division or org in your company, usually we look at a higher scope like management group or subscription. So having like a family tree hierarchy makes things also a little bit difficult in terms of governance. And one of the biggest topics, of course, is service principles. So service principles have been always used to do automation, which is a good thing, to automate as much as possible. But they introduce a huge risk in terms of secret management and secret rotation and expiry and privileged access that the service principal usually get. And since it's not a user, you usually forget about it. So a user, if a user moves to a different company or leaves the company or a different team, if you have a good process, you can detect that and look at the permissions. But service principal is very hard to track. So again, where are those service principal assigned, what permission that they have? This is also a very common hidden compromise risk.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Always any environment, you're definitely going to find service principals that are like have lots of secrets. Secrets are expired, or they have very privileged access, specifically in pilots when you're trying to deploy something, and a lot of people forget about those. So it's a very important thing to look at. Another thing is if you're adopting Azure landing zones, you have to do a little bit of life cycle management of Azure landing zone in terms of the policies. Some policies get deprecated, some policies start as custom policies and then converted to built-in policies, and there are versions. So how do you look at your current implemented Azure landing zone, platform landing zone specifically, and understand which policies that needs to be updated, removed, etc. So again, this is also a very common challenge.
I can imagine, yeah, for me currently in my current situation, we are hitting this button.
Yeah. Yeah,
like
indeed.
adding new policies, but also seeing the deprecated ones and the custom ones we have chosen because the built-ins were not compliant at that moment or not available.
And if I may ask, how do you currently tackle this kind of challenge?
Good question for me. We are using the enterprise policy as code, or otherwise EPAC solution to deploy the policies. We're looking to the best practices as mentioned on the ALZ community pages, but also on the documentation sites. And together also to the default Azure built-in policy overview, which explains per Azure resource what should be possible to enable audits or deny specific requirements to get the compliancy. A checklist which actual Azure policy should be enabled, and mostly also explained which one they should have, which value, so to speak.
Okay, good to know. And I think in the demo, I'm gonna show a little bit on how AzGovViz can help in terms of lifecycle management of ALZ. There are two features that do that, and also in the I'll share some resources as well that we can include in the description to help the viewers to understand the Azure policies that they have, the new policies, the version, what has changed from the previous version, and also from an ALZ perspective. So hopefully this would be helpful.
Definitely cool.
Perfect. The last example is when you get asked what's our security posture in terms of identity or in terms of specifically role-based access control. Sometimes when we look at customer environments to do assessments, we would find that it's easy to grant owner to anyone because everything is going to work if they're deploying something. And does everyone have access to everything? And does everyone have the same privileged access to everything? And do they actually need it? So seeing this at scale is, again, challenging. You would have to go to pair subscription or pair scope and look at the RBAC assignments and look at the inherited ones. It's again, it's not ideal to just click in the portal and look at things. So yeah, it's a big no. Yeah, and those are just some example questions that would help understand what are the challenges, and what we're going to talk about today can help in alleviating those kinds of challenges. So in short, the Azure Governance Visualizer, or short AzGovViz, is simply a PowerShell script. It has been built by a colleague at Microsoft called Julian Hayward, and I'm going to share also the repo. And his motivation in building this is to provide a single pane of glass in terms of everything related to Azure governance. So policies, RBAC, management group, diagnostics, limits, consumption, security posture, and on a regular basis, there are much more features being added. And the cool thing about this is it's not just showing you just like all the role assignments, but also it shows you some insight. So what guest accounts have privileged permissions, or which service principals have owner permissions, or what are custom role assignments that are orphaned, they're not assigned to anyone, and much more assignments at the different levels. So it also gives you a hint in terms of this is a best practice you're not following. You should do this instead of how you're doing things now. So if you want to look at the governance in general, you'll be able to do this. If you're also looking to improve your security and governance posture, it also nudges you in the right directions, and you can track your progress as you run it, because it looks at the previous run and the next run, and then it shows you the difference, what has changed, so that you can have like a measurable, tangible impact in terms of the work that you're doing to improve your governance and security.
I totally like this one. I can't wait to the demo.
Yeah, just 2 more slides. And the way it does that is simply it pulls all the governance and security information from Azure Resource Manager and the Microsoft Graph API. So usually, as I was saying, the first slide, clicking the portal is not fun. To be able to do this, you have to jump between portals, Entra ID, Azure Portal, PIM, whatever. But this information is already there, but you have to know how to query it. Some stuff are in the Microsoft Graph API, some stuff are in Azure APIs. The APIs are different. So instead of just figuring out one by one, Julian has done a great job to just put all of this into one tool so that you can run it and get all the information that you need. It also can be run at the tenant level, or if you're, for example, as a security or a governance admin, you want to just focus on one management group hierarchy or a specific organization within your company. So you can definitely scope it to a specific management group, or you can run it across your tenants. The last thing is you can run it manually, and this is what I'm going to show you today. I'm just going to run it from the console. And you can run it in Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions, so that you run it on a regular basis and get an updated report like a daily or weekly, etc. And you can even host it on like an Azure App Service, or it's basically a static website. So you can host it wherever you are and give access to different people to look at.
Nice. I can make my security people very happy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like a web portal for them, and you can charge them for it. No, I'm kidding. And the last thing on this slide is what you see on the right. This is the view of the HTML report. It's an interactive report. This is what I'm going to show in the demo, but just wanted to note that this is one of the output formats of this tool. There are more output formats that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So in terms of requirements, how to run this tool. So this tool, again, because it queries Azure Resource Manager and Graph APIs, it needs some permissions, and all of this is documented in the repo. I'm going to show it, but it really needs basically read permissions, so very least privilege permissions. because again, maybe you're going to run it using a service principal, maybe you're going to run it using your user account, maybe a managed identity. So it depends on how you're going to run it. You're going to find in the documentation the permissions that you need to grant to this principal that is going to run the tool. From a software perspective, you need PowerShell 7, and it installs a couple of PowerShell modules. The one I will note here is the first one, AZ API call. This is a module created by the author of AzGovViz, and this module is basically abstracting communicating with the Azure Resource Manager and Microsoft Graph APIs using REST APIs. So I'm sure if you're using PowerShell modules, maybe when a new release is coming, has been introduced, maybe there is a bug or something and you have to roll back the PowerShell module. So this module just uses REST APIs at the back end, so it reduces the regressions that would happen. So you don't have to learn the REST API works, you just can use this module. So it makes things easier. So it's already embedded in the tool, but just a note if someone is interested to know what this module is all about. In terms of the output, so as I've shown, there is the main HTML report that I'm going to show, but you can also export everything that it shows in CSV, in Markdown, in JSON, so you can consume this output in, maybe you have another tool that you want to get those insights, do some processing, and send them to someone. So you can definitely turn on and off which output that you want to do. And in the HTML report, we can export any table that we want, as I'm going to show you. So it's very versatile, it's very flexible. It depends on the environment that you have. So before we jump on to the demo, do you have any questions, or should I directly jump to the demo?
You can jump to the demo. All my
Okay.
questions were already answered, so take it away.
Okay, awesome. So let me share my screen again. So this is the repo for the tool. In the repo, you're going to find lots of documentation on what the tool does, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of things. In terms of the features, you're going to find everything that this tool offers. And as I said, there are new features being added. So if you want to understand what to expect, you're going to find like it lists the custom policy definitions, policy exemptions. If I scroll down, you're going to find a section for the Azure landing zone specific feature that it introduces. RBAC, what does it show in terms of RBAC? So again, a very comprehensive list in terms of what feature this tools provide. And the cool thing is this tool has lots of toggles in terms of the parameters. So if you're not interested in a specific output, you can turn it off so that you don't have like a big list of files to go through, and you have a clean HTML report. And to show you this, I'll go into the parameters. You're going to find it's very customizable. I think like 70 plus parameter or something, so that you can customize, you can whitelist specific subscriptions, you can do exception in terms of what data to collect. So again, it's very versatile. In terms of the permissions, so there is a section that talks about what kind of Entra ID and Azure permissions that we need, depending on the scenario. As I said, you're going to find, maybe I'm going to run it from the PowerShell console, and this is what I'm going to do today. Or I'm going to run it using a guest account or a service principal. So it has very detailed information around what kind of permission do we actually need. And given that you've have the prerequisites, you have the permissions, you know what features and you're going to turn on and off. There are, as I mentioned, there are multiple ways that you can deploy this. And if I go to the deployment guide, you're going to find steps to run it from the console, steps that you would run it from Azure DevOps, and also GitHub Actions and publishing the output to an Azure web app. There is another also method that is in the repo, is an accelerator that we created, so that it's like a GitHub action that automates, that help you to automate the prerequisites, run PowerShell scripts to grant access, and run the tool and then publish it to an Azure web app. So the accelerator just meant to get you from zero, from just cloning the repo, into having an Azure web app that you have the tool already running on a regular basis to publish the content. So the deployment documentation is very thorough, and it's going to help you up and running in no time.
Awesome.
So yeah, let's just run the tool and then see what data does it give us. So I've already cloned the repository on my machine. The one thing I wanted to show is that this is the PowerShell script that does all of the magic. And if you see, it's a very big script. It's like 37,000 lines of code. So kudos to Julian for doing that. But let's run the tool and see how it looks like. So I'm going to run the tool with minimum parameters. Of course, you can put, as I said, like 70 plus parameters. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to run the tool. I'm going to dump all of the output into this folder. And I don't have PIM, privileged identity management, in my tenant. So I have to put this parameter so that I don't get any errors. And this is the management group ID that I want to run the tool against. As I said, you can run it tenant level, but I'll just run it on this management group. The tool is going to start to check some endpoints, like the ARM endpoints. It's going to check my permissions. And the cool thing here is it's telling me that the tool is being run with more permissions than it's needed, because I'm using my account, which is a root tenant permission. So it notifies you. You don't need all of this access to run it. So it's a cool thing that that it shows you that. And also, if you're using GitHub Actions and you're using a public repository, it's gonna give you an error. You have to use a private, because this would contain critical information about your organization, so you don't want to put it in a public repo. So it does those checks and stops if you don't follow them.
I agree. This is very sensitive data, so it
Yes,
shouldn't be public.
Shouldn't be a public repo on GitHub for sure. And then it's going to keep working. It clones a couple of repos. It starts querying your Azure environment. It's going to take some time, so I already have run it before. So I'm going to just show you how it looks like after it has run. So this is the report, the HTML report. And as you can see, first it visualizes my whole Azure environment. So I have my root management group. I have the different management groups I have, and I can see the number of subscriptions per management group. So this gives me like a visualization of how my hierarchy looks. So the first thing that I usually do is, for example, I want to look at this management group, the platform management group. And it's going to highlight it here. And if I click on it, it's going to start to give me some insights specifically for this management group. So for example, I can see that I just have one subscription below the scope. I will see the Defender secure score for this. Again, this is a demo environment, so I don't have much resources there. I'm going to see consumption data. I'm going to see the different resource types that I have in this management group. I'm going to see also the policy assignments that are available at this management group. As you can see, it's very verbose in terms of the policy ID, the display name, the category. Is this policy part of the Azure Landing Zones policies or not? What's the effect? What's the parameters? A lot of information if you want to dig deep into the policy assignments on this management. Similarly, the role assignments as well. Yep. Go ahead.
And how can I see if a policy is deprecated? Where can you see the versioning? As you mentioned, like I have, for instance, this is an old policy. There's a new one. you have to update. How do you see that in this picture?
Let me show you this. So this is gonna be visible in the tenant summary. So the tenant summary, I'm gonna, let's start with the policy node. So in the policy node, I'm gonna see everything related to Azure policies. So for example, the different custom policy definitions that I have, and if I have assignments for this, if I have who's the user who created those, the date, etc. And the orphaned custom policies, so any custom policies that are not assigned, why do I still have them, etc. And I'm going to also see, for example, if I go to the ALZ policy version, I'm going to see also the versions of the policy. So here I can see the policy version, and it's also going to show me the state of this policy. So for example, this policy is obsolete, this one is up to date in terms of versioning. In terms of is it still part of Azure Landing Zone recommended policies or not? So this table is going to give you that kind of information specifically to Azure Landing Zones. In terms of all of the policies, you're going to find the version information in the Excel sheet that gets exported. So if I go here and I can download the CSV, and here you're going to find more verbose information, and the policy is the version is going to be a column there as well.
Nice. Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Perfect. Sure. So in terms of policies, you have also a section that specifically for deprecated built-in policies. So for example, I have this policy assignment, and this policy is actually deprecated. So why do I still have this policy assigned to this specific subscription, for example? So this is a good insight that I need to look at. Why do I have it assigned? And also similarly to policy initiatives as well. So those two views specifically look at deprecated policies and help me track those. Specifically with policies now, with versioning, with major versioning and minor versioning, there can be some breaking changes. So it's also good to have this view and evaluate how to move to a newer version and make sure that nothing is going to break. So moving away from policy to role-based access control, in this node, you're going to find lots of, again, in basic information and then insights. So here I can see the custom role definitions that I have, their ID, the scopes that they can be assigned to, created by whom, etc. And I can see the orphaned ones that are not assigned to anything. I can see classic administrators. So again, this is being deprecated, so it's good to be able to see where are those assigned in my environment and move away from using classic administrators. If I have PIM enabled, then I'm going to get more insights around PIM role assignments in my environment. And then here you're going to find the insights that I was talking about. So for example, owner permission assignments to a service principal. So I have this service principal, this ID, and it has owner permissions on like management groups and for subscriptions, for example. So why do I have this? Do I need this or not? So it's a good for you to immediately understand where do you want to act and start evaluating those assignments and either removing them or moving them to a less privileged role as well. And this is a common one, like guest users with high permission. So why do I have this guest user that has user access administrator on my subscription? This is usually a flag, and Defender for Cloud, I think, is going to flag this as well.
Yeah, but it's a good overview of the topics that you have to take in action.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And to your point, when you're thinking about what happens during an audit, you have to list all of this kind of information and then drill down and slice and dice to get the real important information that you need to act on. So this gives you that kind of information, and the security team can just look at it instead of getting to the cloud team and we need to figure this out. We have to run a script or something to export this kind of information.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think you're going to make a lot of security people happy since they can just run the script and see the total overview and then ask for questions, so to speak, to the teams which are responsible for setting permissions or policies or service principal creation and that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely worthwhile to investigate.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main point here is giving you actionable information to so that you can act upon it. So that's the main point here. Um, let's look at another tab. So subscription resources and defender. So this is gonna go a level deeper than management group. So I'm gonna see the subscriptions that I have. I'm gonna see like the total cost that for the last 30 days of the subscription, the secure score, any tags. I'm gonna touch on the limits a little bit later. And I can also look at the different tags that I have and the scopes that they're assigned to and the number of resources that are assigned to this tag. I can see all of the resources available. Again, I can export this and get more details. I can see resources by location. I can see if I'm following the Cloud Adoption Framework naming standard instead in terms of resources. So for example, for key vault, this should be the prefix. So I see that one key vault is not matching this naming convention. Again, if you're following the CAF naming convention, this can be helpful.
Naming conventions are always a pain, but definitely
Yeah,
very
yeah,
useful. Useful indeed.
absolutely, absolutely. And I can look also at orphaned resources. So orphaned resources are mainly resources that might have cost and they're not being actively used. So to give you an example, if you have an application gateway that does not have backend pool, so you're being charged by the hour and it's just sitting there not doing anything. So this tab is really helpful to show you those costly resources that are just sitting there, and also from a governance perspective, like empty route tables or empty network security groups that are not assigned to any subnet. So it's a matter of just cleaning up your environment, because as you have more resources, it becomes harder to govern and have visibility. So this tab is also useful in terms of that. You can see like resource provider registrations, resource features registrations. You can look at the locks that you have. So again, a very good thing in terms of governance of production workloads. Maybe you would have a read-only or cannot delete lock. So it's useful to look at this. And summary of Defender. So Defender usually has very good workbooks in the Azure portal, but also here you can have a quick insights. For example, I'm using a deprecated container registry plan. Now I think it's Defender for Containers plan. So again, it gives you some very useful insights in terms of Defender. The last thing I'll show here, then I'll jump to another thing, is PS Rule. So PS Rule is another tool that helps you automate measuring the compliance against Azure best practices for the well-architected framework. So it scans your environment and then say for security, for operational excellence, for cost optimization, those are the best practices that you're not following. And you can integrate this tool with AzGovViz so that it can run this kind of assessment and then gives you here a result of what best practices from the well-architected framework that you're not following. And again, I can filter, I can export this to Excel to go through more details.
Cool. We're going a little bit to the roundup.
Uh,
It really gives an amazing amount of information, low-hanging fruit of fixes that have to be applied, or at least being verified to the cloud adoption framework, which I very love. I also see some limits. I also see costs, which you can deep dive into it. So this tool is an endless source of information, I could say, just to verify for compliance, but also to clean up your resources you don't use. So yeah, definitely worthwhile to try it out yourself. At least first try it on one subscription to just learn the tool. But
Yes.
definitely worthwhile to investigate.
Absolutely. And as you said, it's going to take a lot of time to show everything. But the cool thing is in the repo, there is a demo HTML report. So even you can just click through it and look at what it provides, and then definitely run it on your environment to see what's actually happening. And then think about how to automate this to have this report on a regular basis so that you can track your progress.
Cool. Well, we will share this link beneath the video. Are there any things you want to give a last shout out? Things that you can say, like, well, getting started, or any
Uh,
other?
no, I think I'll provide some resources, and the one takeaway here is governance is an ongoing journey. It's not a one-time thing. That's why I said run the tool once and then think about running it on a regular cadence, because things change, Azure changes, your requirements are going to change. So try to embed this tool and similar tools into your day-to-day so that you stay on top of what's happening in your Azure.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very good advice. Thank you very much. Until next time, I would say take care.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Take
You're
care.
welcome.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.